I need to help you. You don't know how to fix it? Thank you. Here we go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Syria and the Syrian people celebrate today the anniversary of our Independence Day. We got our independence from the French colonial rules long time ago, and the Syrian people will not tolerate any attempt by the French policy and the French government, of course, to get back to Syria again. The French government should understand that the colonial era is over. This sudden hyper-diplomatic activism by France and Britain is a little bit awkward and weird because it focuses only on what they call the old city of Homs, while they forgot about these Turkish-sponsored terrorist attacks on the area of Kasab 20 days ago, where the military operations are still going on, where the Syrian army is still facing these terrorist groups sponsored by the Turkish government. I sent on behalf of my government 5 letters in 3 days with regard the Turkish-sponsored terrorist attacks on the area of Kasab. And the French delegation, the British delegation, the American delegation did not call for an urgent meeting of the Security Council and did not ask for a briefing by Mrs. Amos or elsewhere, anybody else, to speak and to come to the Council to brief the members about these wrongdoings and outrageous Turkish military aggression against the sovereignty of a member state of this organization. I would like to remind you of a couple remarks. Number one, yesterday the Security Council met to discuss what they call the 20th anniversary of the genocide in Rwanda. On this occasion, the members themselves of the Security Council made pertinent remarks with regard the way the Security Council sometimes deals with dangerous situations such as the genocide in Rwanda. The Malaysian ambassador, former ambassador, who was presiding over the Security Council in 1994 when the Rwanda massacres took place, came and briefed the Council yesterday, and he acknowledged that many wrongdoings were done at that time by the members of the Security Council, and many mistakes were taken. And then other members blamed the Secretariat for not presenting accurate information to the Security Council in order to enable the members to act appropriately. So we have problem. Of course, another member of the Security Council, a permanent member, criticized, by the way, yesterday, the way some members of the Security Council are conducting their businesses on Syria. And this is where I want to come, to create a linkage between yesterday and today. Till now, the French delegation, the British and some other delegations, the American of course, are presenting partial information, wrong information. They are misleading the Security Council members on what's going on in Syria. So they are repeating the same mistakes they did when the genocide in Rwanda took place 20 years ago. They didn't get the lesson, as some members said yesterday, from this horrible and appalling massacre of Rwanda. They kept repeating the same mistakes after Rwanda. They did it in Iraq, they did it in Libya, they did it in Somalia, they want to do it in Syria, they did it in Lebanon. They don't get the lesson, and they keep repeating the same mistakes, meaning using the Security Council to achieve heinous agendas against the sovereignty of member states in this organization. With regard to what's going on in the old city of Homs, I would like to let you know that in the old city of Homs, there are right now 170 civilians only and 2,000 terrorists. There were continuous attempts by the government's representatives in Homs to convince these civilians as well as the military terrorists to leave the city. To leave the city. You may remember 10 days ago, 4 of the leaders of these terrorist groups operating in the old city of Homs were even allowed to get out of the old city of Homs to meet with the Syrian government representatives in order to discuss together a deal that would terminate the dramatic and tragic situation in the old city of Homs due to these terrorist groups' activities. While the 4 leaders of these terrorist groups were discussing the details of surrendering to the Syrian government and having their situation, as we say, settled down by the government through what we call the process of national reconciliation, 2 booby cars exploded and killed 50 civilians in Homs and wounded 170, all of them civilians, by the same terrorist groups. Why did that happen? It's because they got instructions from outside to torpedo this attempt by the government to put an end to the violence in the old city of Homs. And by the way, these terrorist groups operating in the old city of Homs do not have one commandment. They follow instructions. They belong to many groups, 3 groups, terrorist groups, and they follow instructions coming from outside of Syria. So they have different antagonistic agendas. The government, as you know, a few months ago, allowed almost 2,700 civilians to leave the old city of Homs, and they are all now in safe haven outside of the old city of Homs. We asked at that time the 170 civilians who are still there to leave, and they refused. They refused because they are relatives of the terrorists. They refused to leave the old city of Homs because they are relatives of the terrorists. They are civilians, but they are relatives of the terrorists. However, the government offered them a good deal to leave the city with those who left the city 2 months ago, as you remember. They refused. We suggested to the terrorists themselves to give themselves up to the government, to surrender to the government, and to integrate within what we call the process of national reconciliation. Some of them accepted, some of them refused, and this is why, while discussing the terms of reference of their surrender to the government, these booby cars terrorist attacks took place in order to torpedo the deal by the government. To make a long story short, the Syrian people do not need a press statement from the Security Council. We need serious commitment and serious action by the Security Council members to make pressure on those governments surrounding Syria who are sponsoring terrorism inside Syria, who are allowing the terrorists to cross the border from Turkey, from Jordan, from Lebanon, and warn once for all the regimes in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, in Turkey, to stop their support to the terrorists and to stop their sponsor of terrorist activities in violation, flagrant violation of the Security Council resolutions related and pertaining to the combating of terrorism. So what we need is not a press statement. We need something much more stronger. We need a commitment, as I said, by those who raised the issue of the old city of Homs today, but they didn't dare raise the issue of Kasab or elsewhere in Syria when thousands of civilians are affected by different kind of atrocities and terrorism sponsored by foreign governments in flagrant violation of the provision of the charter. There are governments who are deeply involved in slaughtering the blood of the Syrian people, and everybody knows about them. You have all heard what Seymour Hirsch said. You have all heard about the videotape leak from the office of the Turkish Minister for Foreign Affairs. So it is not publicity anymore. It has become public, and everybody knows about how deeply the Turkish government is involved in destabilizing the Syria and in shedding blood within Syria. I'm in your hands.
What's the Syrian government demand from those armed groups? Would you allow them to go outside Homs even without a reconciliation process that you're talking about, or it is either there or a fight?
No, we offered them a deal, as I said, not only to these terrorists. We offered the same deal to many others who accepted the deal and left. Thousands of other terrorists already left, and they are in safe haven, but they surrendered their weapons to the government, and they integrated through the process of national reconciliation, meaning that they will not get back to carrying weapons again against the government. Many accepted this deal, but those who are now refusing to integrate within this national reconciliation process, many of them are foreigners. This is why the French ambassador and the British are insisting on dealing with this issue in the Council. They want to save these people from being liquidated and killed by the Syrian forces. So they care about finding out an exit to these terrorists without going through the national reconciliation process.
Ambassador, on Kasab, if you wanted a meeting in the Council on the issue, why didn't you go through Russia or China to accomplish it? And also on the 170 civilians that you say who are left in the old city of Homs, why would you want them to leave? What do you have planned for this city that they shouldn't be there?
We would like them to leave because they are civilians. We don't want them to get caught into the crossfire with the terrorists. This is why we want them to leave.
And on the meeting about
And not to be, hold on, hold your horses. Hold your horses, hold your horses. We don't want them to get caught into the crossfire between the Syrian army and the terrorist groups. They are civilians and we want them to leave. The same way we allowed thousands of civilians to leave the city. We did it and we are ready to do it again. But they refused. These 170 civilians, they didn't want to leave the old town, either because they are under pressure by the terrorist groups, or because they are relatives of some of these terrorists. Now, why didn't ask Russia and China? Why Russia and China? All of the 15 members of the Security Council are in charge of maintaining peace and security, not only Russia and China. But to answer your question, again, we sent 10 letters, 10 on what happened in Kasab. 10 letters drawing the kind attention of the Secretary General and the members of the Security Council about what is happening in the area of Kasab.
But then why are you singling out Britain, France, and the US if all 15 ignored your letter?
Because the French policy and the British policy and the American policy are deeply responsible of what's going on in Syria. Rather than encouraging the political settlement, peaceful political settlement, as you know, the Americans authorized the delivery of American-made anti-tanks missiles, the TOW, to the terrorist groups. And they call them opposition, by the way. They call Al-Qaeda and Daesh and Jabhat al-Nusra Front, they call them opposition. They don't call them terrorist entities, although they are enlisted on the list of the Security Council of entities sponsoring terrorism. So there is some kind of not double standards. It's a big hypocrisy taking place in this council.
بالعربي إذا أمكن سؤال بالعربي.
Please.
Those rockets. They said it was they were used by an FSA faction called Harakat Hazm, and I wanted to know, you're saying that the U.S. authorized it. Some people are saying they just came in through Saudi Arabia or Turkey. What's the basis of saying the U.S. authorized them? And is this the group that's used them, or have they gone more widely distributed?
This group is an integral part of the Al-Nusra Front, which we asked to enlist on the Security Council list of entities sponsoring terrorism. We did it 4 months ago. Still, we are waiting for the council to deal with it. But they are Al-Nusra Front is an offshoot of Al-Qaeda in Syria.
Where do these TOW missiles come from? I mean, I know they're U.S. made, but how did they get into the country?
There is no way anybody could dare delivering such American-made missiles without the green light of Washington. No way. The Qataris are there to pay the money, the Saudis are ready to pay the money, the Turkish are ready to facilitate the terrorists carrying these weapons through the border, our border with Turkey. The Jordanians, unfortunately, are allowing transfer of terrorists trained inside Jordan to Turkey, and then from Turkey they ship them to Kasab area where we are fighting them. It's a big scandal. This is outrageous scandal and scandalous situation taking place by these governments. It's really outrageous. Thank you.
أنتم اتهمتم بعض الدول هنا بعرقلة عقد اجتماع بشأن كسب. كيف تقيمون الاجتماع الذي حصل اليوم وإلى أي مدى سيساعد على حل الوضع في حمص؟
السلوك الفرنسي والبريطاني اليوم سلوك مستهجن لأنه تجاهل ما يجري في أماكن أخرى من سوريا، من أعمال إرهابية تجري في أماكن أخرى من سوريا. تجاهل أننا أرسلنا 10 رسائل حول ما يجري في كسب من عدوان تركي مباشر عبر تشجيع المجموعات الإرهابية التي دخلت من الأراضي التركية لمهاجمة كسب. 10 رسائل أرسلنا، ولم يحرك السفير الفرنسي أو السفير البريطاني إصبعا لكي يثير هذه المسألة في مجلس الأمن، مع العلم بأن كسب يعني يسكنها عشرات آلاف السوريين، بينما منطقة حمص القديمة التي أثاروا الدنيا ولم يقعدوها اليوم بشأنها فيها 170 مدني فقط، وكلهم أو معظمهم وجلهم من عائلات الإرهابيين الذين يتواجدون في حمص القديمة. هذا ليس معايير مزدوجة، هذا نفاق مستهجن ومدان. هذه ليست دول مؤتمنة على حفظ الأمن والسلم الدوليين. مجلس الأمن أصبح الآن يدار بطريقة كاريكاتورية مبتذلة لا تليق بمعايير الحفاظ على الأمن والسلم الدوليين من قبل بعض الدول على الأقل. ما يجري من تهريب للسلاح عبر الحدود التركية، ما يجري من شراء للاتحاد الأوروبي من قبل الاتحاد الأوروبي للنفط السوري من القاعدة وجبهة النصرة وداعش. الاتحاد الأوروبي يشتري النفط السوري الذي من منظمات مثل داعش والقاعدة وجبهة النصرة عبر وسطاء أتراك بسعر بخس وزهيد طبعا، لأنهم يتحكمون بهذه المادة الحيوية السورية ويسرقون هذه الثروة الوطنية السورية. هل هناك ما هو أسوأ من ذلك عندما يقوم الاتحاد الأوروبي بالادعاء بأنه صديق للشعب السوري ويفرض علينا العقوبات الاقتصادية من ناحية، يقوم من ناحية ثانية بشراء النفط السوري والغاز من الإرهابيين الموجودين على قائمة مجلس الأمن للكيانات الراعية للإرهاب؟ هذا نفاق. أصبحت القصة مفضوحة ومكشوفة، ولا يليق بهذه الدول أن تجلس في مجلس الأمن وتسمي نفسها دول مؤتمنة على الحفاظ على الأمن والسلم الدوليين. لديهم مشاكل مع الحكومة السورية يمكن أن نفهم ذلك، أو مع أي حكومة أخرى، لكن أن تكون في مجلس الأمن وتدعي أنك مناط بك مهمة الحفاظ على الأمن والسلم الدوليين شيء، وأن ترعى الإرهاب وتشتري النفط والغاز من إرهابيين شيء آخر. هذه الحكومات يجب أن تساءل حتى من قبل مجلس الأمن على سوء ائتمانها لمسؤولياتها التاريخية في مجلس الأمن.
سؤال آخر بالنسبة موضوع الكيماوي، هناك بيان صدر عن اللجنة المشتركة للأمم المتحدة ومنظمة حظر الأسلحة الكيميائية بأن العملية تعطلت تماما، وأنه من الصعب تلبية الموعد النهائي.
لا هذا بيان قديم. ثلثي المواد الكيماوية السورية تم تدميرها وإخراجها من البلد، وباقي ثلث فقط. بالعكس، آخر بيان للمدير التنفيذي لمنظمة حظر الأسلحة الكيماوية أشار إلى حدوث تقدم كبير في هذا الموضوع. لا يوجد أي مشكلة في هذا الموضوع. شكرا.